What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about the Helldivers 2 situation. I can't believe it. You know, there's definitely two different sides to things. There's people that say it's not too big of a deal. There's people that say, the Earth is collapsing. But at the core of things, it is a giant mess. Like, I think no matter which side, and, we'll talk about what exactly is going on and where I stand on it, but no matter where you stand, I think it's hard to say that it's not a giant mess. You're having people from Arrowhead right there issuing remarks, and they're telling people directly to actually give the game low scores, and they mean that. They actually meant to change the score to issue some sort of thing to PlayStation. There's people unearthing basically that there was a person connected to the studio, I believe within the first day that the game came out, where she had actually said that it was the studio's decision. It wasn't PlayStation's decision. They want it so that they could ban people easier. So it is a gigantic mess, and it comes in attacks. It really engulfs I would say maybe the most successful game of 2024 so far. We just talked about this. We just talked about how Sony might have accidentally backed themselves up on just an ironically hilarious game that is a live service game and does everything that they wanted in their live service. And they cancel 4 or 5 of their own, and all of a sudden this game comes out. Now, as of the time I'm recording this, it really doesn't seem too much like the player base is suffering. It really, at the same time though, there's been a new development. People are going after refunds, and people are starting to post at least images on social media that they're getting refunds for this game with hundreds of hours played in it. There was a person specifically that put 250 hours into this game, and because of what is going on here, they asked for a refund, and they actually got it for the full whatever, I think $44 with tax. So the game might start to really suffer. It's obviously suffering with review scores, but it might really start to suffer with player base. We'll see. As of right now, it doesn't really look like it, but things can change. Things can change over time. So what is this basically? Well, it's as simple and yet as complex as you're going to have to link your account to PlayStation. You need the PSN account. Now, the reason why this is such a big deal is there's multiple territories across the entire world where you can't do that now, or they don't have, a PlayStation linking system. Now, technically, you could just pick a different territory. Technically, I believe you could even use a VPN if you wanted to. It is possible. I think, but here's the thing, and this is really where it starts to get a little bit more complex, right? Why are people mad? It's for that reason. This was something that was going to be in the game day one. They took it down. They didn't put it back up. And then now, 2 months later, they put it back up. People, however, okay, now that is one thing, and I would say, well, you got to be kind of aware of what you're getting yourself into, right? If it was a system that was in place for day one and they warn you about it going into it, and then they don't do it, and they do it a couple months, it immediately makes it tricky. It immediately makes it kind of a cluster F, right? Because it's like, well, they kind of told you it was going to happen, and you bought the game with that knowledge. But at the same time, for the first several months of the game's existence, they didn't enforce it. They didn't even do it. And then now they're doing it, later into the game, and they're going to screw over some people, so those people are upset. I get it. I mean, I actually kind of get both sides, right? Because it's like a buyer beware, but it's also at the same time, well, you didn't do anything. You bought the game and nothing happened, and then all of a sudden you implement it later. So maybe you should have implemented it day one or not at all, right? One of those two things. Then there's also confusion of why do you actually need it. And again, conflicting kind of responses. Maybe it's to ban people. Maybe it's to, the general idea, at least that I saw originally, was just to make it safer, right? When it comes to hacking and when it comes to cheating and all that stuff, it's to make the entire ecosystem safer. Well, when you say safer, safe to some people isn't safe to other people. So again, that is kind of a giant mess there. But then, so that was the basis of it, right? You have to link the accounts, and people are doing comparisons to well, hey, if you buy a game with Xbox, you buy a game with Take-Two, or, with Red Dead Redemption. I saw that one TikTok of the guy going through all the different companies. Again, in some ways that it makes sense. And it's why I think this entire thing is kind of just a giant mess, because for many games, you do have to connect your account, but for many games, you do it day one, or you know what I mean? And this game doesn't do that. And then on top of things, now people have bought it, and now Like, if they don't go through that extra step, and to be honest with you, like, if you buy in just a random region that doesn't have, PSN, then, yeah, I say you could use a VPN, you could do this or do that. That does take, like, that extra step, and I would understand people just saying, like, well, no, I'm not doing that. You know what I mean? So I do get that, and I think that's really maybe where the divide comes into play. But then it's really, well, like, what's come after? You know what I mean? It clearly upset people, and it clearly made people do the negative reviews. Then they were, and I don't even want to say egged on, because, as I said, they were outright told from the studio to just give the game bad scores. So this game has absolutely plummeted, and it's become an even more giant mess, right? I think yesterday, or maybe the last couple days alone, it's gotten over 100,000 negative reviews, and people are changing it. So now it's like, out of 330,000, I think, reviews, 120, which is 33 to 66%, right? Extremely negative to the 66% that's not. So, I mean, that is not a good look. But of course, like, it's people doing what they want to do, and it's also they said to do it, right? Now, like I said, the most recent developments, it's not just the refunding thing, which is going to be interesting to see, because I do really want to see, like, how far will people go? Is it just people complaining about it? And I'm not saying, like, you're wrong to complain or you're right to complain. Let's take just a neutral stance. I'm just interested to see how far does it go, because it's easy to, leave a review. It's even easy to change your review. But to refund the game or to not play the game, it's not the hardest thing in life. It's, unless, I guess, maybe if you're addicted or something, but it's still one step more. And some people don't do that one step more, right? But some people do. So I'm really going to be interested to see if this slows down the sales, because this game has been crushing it in terms of, how many people are buying it and playing it since it came out. But then also how many people just give it up that have actually already bought it, right? So that's something I'm really interested in. But there has been posts, I think on, like, their official Discord server from people within the studio. They are talking. They are talking to PlayStation, and at least the most recent thing that I saw, it seems to be they're really working on it. The developers hate it, which does make that first tweet, like I said, from that one girl that works there, like the first day, it makes that very confusing, because, like, if the developers want it, now everybody hates it. Like, what's the true story? Which one's right? Which one's wrong? I mean, I do think that they were caught almost blindsided by this, because it doesn't seem like they're happy. Seems like, the CEO of the studio, like, from the higher ups of the studio to the lower downs in the studio, everybody seems kind of confused as well, because it doesn't really seem like there was any kind of communication. Some people were saying, like, they didn't even think it was a big deal. Oh, just link your account. No biggie. Either do it or don't do it. But it's like, it's a little bit more complex than that. So I feel like it just really caught them off guard, and they didn't really know how to respond, and they maybe didn't even know the severity of, of like what it would do. And like I said, like, for all games for this to happen to, right? Pick a game for this to happen to. It's got to be Helldivers 2. Ironically, Sony's big live service thing, a thing that had not even just that. Okay, take that part out of it. It had such goodwill. And I do say had, because I think it lost so much of that, even though the core game is still excellent. You know what I mean? And that's what also makes it kind of weird or complicated. Like, do people stop playing it because maybe it wasn't their decision, and the game is still good, and they're still updating it? And, I mean, this is a game, like, for the long haul. You know what I mean? So it's got value in playing, but, like, do you have to make a point or do you not have to make a point? So, again, I do think that part's going to be kind of interesting to see if people do it, but it had so much goodwill. Like, the amount of times I would see online, and I think it was matched also just by the numbers. Like, okay, you could see stuff online. It doesn't have to necessarily reflect the player base. No. What you saw online of just the respect for the team, respect for the game, like the army kind of thing, the democracy, kind of like leaning into the memes, right? But just the idea that, okay, well, this one faction of enemies come. Okay, we need all Helldivers to take this out. The tweet gets 100,000 likes, and they do it. They liberate the entire area. Okay, you can take a rest, Helldivers. Oh, now it comes from another area. The community and their support for the community was unmatched that I have seen in recent time, okay? It just had so much goodwill from both sides. It had respect from them, which you don't always get. I think it had a lot of respect from players. So, like, again, of all freaking games for this to happen to, it's got to be the most successful game of the year, literally statistically, and then also just a game that seemingly was doing everything right. In this era, by the way, of live service games where most times it doesn't work out. Most times there's something that's, maybe they sneak it in there later. Maybe it just starts out where something's wrong. You know what I mean? Something always tends to be wrong, at least one thing with live service games. This game really kind of had it all. And it, again, doesn't necessarily mean it's completely screwed. Well, maybe let's end on that. Is this game done for? I want to say no. I want to say no because of, like I said, the most recent thing. It really looks like there is communication, and the most recent things that I'm seeing is like they're not going to make people choose between never playing it again or like giving it up and refunding it and linking with PlayStation. There's got to be another way. And maybe it's as simple as, and here's the thing, I don't think everybody's going to win in this situation. I think what's going to happen is if you're in a region that does the PSN thing, you're still going to have to do it. If you're not in a region, I think you won't have to do it. I feel like, I mean, maybe you could say, well, maybe that's the best case scenario. I feel like it's just piss people off where they don't really want to do it at all. But I will say, if that case, what I just said, if that scenario plays out, I would lean a little bit more towards some of the more funny TikToks and stuff that I've seen online where it's like, okay, well, still, like, going back to the basics, they did say it was going to be in the game. It wasn't in the game, and then they put it in the... I understand that's definitely... And I don't want them to do that, okay? But I think because of that situation, and because if you go to play other games on Steam and they're through Xbox, they're through Ubisoft, they're through whatever, you have to have the account. You know what I mean? I wouldn't necessarily agree with the outrage as much as I do now. Right now, I would say I would agree with the outrage more than I would agree with, I guess, the defense of it. But if they fix it to the extent that if you're not in a region that supports it, you're good, but everybody else has to do it. And if people are saying, oh my God, I don't want to do that. I mean, I get it because it's later in the game and they should have just done it at launch or not at all. But at the same time, a lot of games, especially in this kind of situation where it's, linked up to, say, a big publisher, right? They do that. So it's harder, I would say, to back the people that are mad if that happens. And I do think that will happen because I can't imagine all this stuff we're saying about how good the game is and how much money it's made and just how successful it's been. Like, yes, it's kind of, in a strange way, almost hilarious how, like, stupid this entire thing is and how they're on, like, the path to ruining this game, right? Like, it's actually unbelievable. But the caveat is, will they actually let this game be ruined? Now, like, hey, the internet never forgets. And the people that are refunding this thing after 200-plus hours, they might not come back. But if they're really making that point, maybe they do come back if some of these things are fixed. But so I guess you could argue, well, like, is it already ruined? I think it's close, but at the same time, I think there's still a path that it would kind of settle and it would be generally okay. We'll see. It's going to be an interesting... I don't even want to... Like, it's not even... This is like a long-term thing. This is something that they've got to get sorted out within the week. Like, this upcoming week, you got to fix it because this is a big deal to a lot of people. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.